Hi everyone, Mike Osborne here, the founder and CEO of Accessible Me. Thank you so much for being here and making the time to engage and even watch this video on repeat if that's what you're doing. Thank you as well for your honesty and your time. You're invited to watch this because you've engaged with us before, often through Eventbrite, a webinar, or a conversation, or one of our sessions. So whether you're joining live, dropping in for 5 minutes, or just saying hello, we're generally glad to have you here. Thank you. Because numbers are a little lower today, we're going to treat this more as a drop-in session rather than a formal webinar. And I actually think that suits us quite well because Accessible Me has never really been about slides or compliance language. It's been about people, it's been about barriers, and it's been about practical change. So today, what we have on the agenda is a chance to celebrate 2 years of Accessible Me, and I'll share a little bit on my journey as the founder of the company. So that's to say, I'm not this isn't 2 years of pretending we've got it all figured out, and it's definitely not 2 years of polished perfection. I'm still learning every single day. So this is 2 years of building something real, something meaningful, and something that's given me a real sense of purpose and a reason to get out of bed and born in. Specifically, 2 years of listening, learning, creating, testing, refining, and helping organizations remove barriers so that more people can learn, work, and thrive. That mission sits right in the center of what we do as a company. As we say in our materials, we exist to empower organizations to remove barriers, unlocking a world where everyone can work, learn, and achieve their dreams, regardless of your age, gender, orientation, ability, anything like that. So here's how we'll spend the next hour or the minutes up till then. First, I'll share some insights into our journey so far. Then I'll talk about some of our clients, the communities that we serve, and the conversations that have helped shape us. And then towards the end, I want us to reflect on what's changed in accessibility since 2024, since when we started it in March 2024, because a lot has shifted. When we've done all that, I'll share where we're heading next, a little bit of insight, some guidance into our products, our partnerships, and our purpose as well. Finally, I'd love this to become a kind of a conversation. So even if you're watching this on demand, please do kind of get in touch, use the comments, drop us an email, and share your reflections with working with us and so on and so forth. So before I go any further, I just want to say this clearly: thank you. If you've attended one of our sessions in the past, we've been doing these since January 2025. If you've shared a post on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, invited us into your organization, recommended us to a colleague, or simply taken accessibility more seriously because of something we've said, you've been part of our journey too. With that, I figure let's look at some highlights from our 2-year journey. And in order to do that, I want to kind of reverse the clock a little bit and take you back to the 24th of March, 2024. That date is important to us because that is when we were founded or recognized on Companies House. In one of my transcripts where we look back, I found myself saying exactly that. I left my job on March 18th, my previous job, and on 24th of March, at that time, Accessible Me was founded. And in many ways, that, even though it's kind of 2 years ago now, it still feels kind of like yesterday. And in other ways, with everything I've learned, the difficulties, the trials and the tribulations, also feels like a lifetime ago as well. What sits behind those 2 years is kind of much longer than 2 years of effort. It's built on 13 years, nearly 14 years experience in learning and development, years of working directly in accessibility with organizations like ING, Virgin Money, British Airways, and even Nationwide, the US insurance firm, not the UK bank. And it's shaped by lived experience. So a combination of professional experience, lived insights, and so on and so forth. Those are the things that make Accessible Me what it is. When we started back in March 2024, the mission was clear. We knew accessibility mattered. It mattered to me, matters to many of you, and whether you think it's the right thing to do or not, we knew that many teams wanted to do better. We also knew that most organizations don't know where to start. They go on to WCAG and they see all of the criteria and they get overwhelmed. Or they get into decision paralysis. They want to do well, but they're scared of getting it wrong. And this is still one of the biggest truths in the space today. People often care. They do. They generally care, and they're well intentioned, but they feel overwhelmed, underconfident, or unsure on what the first practical step is to take. And that's why our work has always been about making accessibility simpler, more human, and more achievable. Over these 2 years, a few things have been very clear about our journey. The first is the message resonates. On LinkedIn yesterday, I had the pleasure of seeing that over lunchtime I'd crossed the 14,000 follower mark, and that has to speak for something. Our strategy work describes the brand as kind of founder-led, human, vulnerable, and relatable, with strong engagement and a clear mission. It also says the content is resonating emotionally and building trust. That matters because accessibility people don't just need facts; they need clarity, confidence, and a reason to act. Secondly, then, we built real traction in the spaces where our audience already spends a lot of time. That means LinkedIn, I've built my network there consciously over time. It means webinars such as this one and the nearly a year and a quarter in. It means community groups, that might be communities of practice, and it means speaking at events. Many of you might be familiar with stuff like learning technology, CIPD events, or events that your organization has held. Also means conversations with L&D teams, HR teams, councils, public sector organizations, and those in marketing and communication professionals who are just trying to do better in what they do. Third, we've learned a lot about what works, not just in accessibility itself, but in how to help people begin on their journey. How to convince leadership they need a pot of money to spend on initiatives, or to get that buy-in from the team. And over time, our offer has become clearer and safer. We've moved towards simpler first steps because that's what organizations in many cases need. And in our current models, these first steps include a webinar, an audit, an escape room through an experience like allyship or a one-to-one strategy. The point here isn't to push you into anything huge, it's to give you a stepping stone, that take that first step, and it's to help you start that journey, start your accessibility journey with confidence. Fourth, we've kept the mission bigger than ourselves, and that's not something that's going to change. I've said that in an ideal world, our goal is to make all of the world's content and all of the world's spaces accessible to all of the world's people. That's obviously bigger than one small team, but it's our direction of travel. It's our North Star, so to speak, and helps kind of follow with that in mind. If I had to summarize these 2 years in kind of one sentence, I'd probably say this. The Sesame has spent 2 years turning accessibility from something abstract, unknown, what people aren't sure of, and something that could be intimidating to many, into something practical, human, and possible. And that's exactly why our allyship empathy lab or allyship gamified experience, the escape room, exists. It was launched in October 2024 and is thriving today. We now have an online version. Now I also want to make this real, because one of the best parts about the last 2 years isn't just the kind of the logos or the slide decks. It's been you, the people who share our posts, the content. It's always around people. It's been the moments where somebody says, kind of, I finally understand this, or I actually can do something with this now. It's not abstract. It's not just a web thing. You've explained how I do this in articulate storyline or on Instagram, or even you've made this feel possible. And in some cases, people have founded their own accessibility companies based on the work we do. And we've had the privilege of supporting a wide range of organizations. Just to list a few, in the financial sector, that includes Virgin Money, who we're proud to say was our first client, includes FTSE 500 companies like ING, and many, many more in the works. In the events and exhibition space, includes companies like Closest to Media, and we work with a number of other people who do accessibility related events as well. And in the charity space, it includes the Charity Learning Consortium, Ambitious by Autism, and again, it's something that I'm very proud of and we continue to. In training consultancy, it includes folks like Same Solutions, we've worked with Clack Soon, and Crosby management training, all interested in what we do. And across other sectors, I've delivered sessions for the likes of Fujitsu, supported programs for Nationwide in the US. I've personally done work for British Airways, the CIPD, Learning Network, events like the Learning Technologies, and we're excited to be kicking off with Boston Consulting Group, or BCG, very soon. A few of those stories are especially worth pausing on. So if I take Virgin Money as an example, Virgin Money, the feedback from participants in the accessibility learning pilot said that my openness around my own accessibility needs, my neurodivergence, created a warm and welcoming atmosphere, that they gained so much knowledge and felt excited about designing and delivering content that's accessible to everyone in their organization. And that's exactly the kind of shift we want. So I'm not trying to build guilt that we haven't done this or fear. Momentum is what I'm after. More recently, in October 2025, Pedro, their global learning lead for ING, said that accessibility is not only important for an inclusive culture, but a mandatory requirement for their instructional designers to understand and put into practice. He kindly said that I brought deep expertise in learning design and accessibility and delivered actionable insights with immediate value. That work also led to a referral into Shell earlier this year, which shows how trust in one organization can travel more, even those in different sectors. At Same Solutions, the feedback was that I opened their eyes to the importance of accessible content, ignited genuine enthusiasm in the team, and demystified regulations while giving them a clear, actionable path forward. And I love the phrase "a clear, actionable path forward" because that's what many people are looking for. They don't need everything; they need their next steps. Where do I get started? If I had this budget, what would I be able to do? You know, if I had a larger budget, what can I do? All of these kind of different things. At the Whitehorn Industry Group, or WIG, more concisely, feedback highlighted around my authenticity, lived experience, and the practical value of the session. They said it left the team with key takeaways and ideas that they can implement in the business. And again, that's the sweet spot for us. Is not awareness alone; it's action. And then, of course, there is, as I noted earlier, there's allyship, or accessibility themed escape room. Allyship has become one of the most distinctive parts of what we do. It takes accessibility and turns it into something that people can feel, not just something they can read about. It's empathy building, team-based experience, and we've already delivered it with Closest Media, soon with Boston Consulting Group. And internally, our strategy is clear that allyship is one of the flagship products and is one of our unique selling points. Which is why if you go on things like Eventbrite, you'll now see if you are interested in bringing allyship to your organization, whether that's the in-person event or whether that's the online virtual event, which has recently been run for the public sector. You're able to bring this to your organization quickly and effectively. We heard you based on the feedback that, hey, I don't always want to pick up the phone. I don't want to have to necessarily send an email. I want to read the information, see if that's the right fit for us, and be able to book. So we've listed our stuff on Eventbrite to help you do that. We also listened to your feedback when you said, Mike, what is the difference between the online version and the in-person version? So based on that feedback, we went on Eventbrite again and added some pictures or photographs of the sessions in practice, just to give you a feel for what this is about. Originally, I had listed two different time slots. One was 10 to 11:30 a.m. here in the UK. The other was 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. Further feedback also said that, hey, Mike, I'm joining this from the US. The time slots you list would be very early for us. Is there anything you can do about it? So we listened once more, and we've recently added an extra slot, 4:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. in the UK, which, depending on where in the United States you are, falls somewhere between around 9:30 a.m. and 12:30 a.m. That's an example, not necessarily an accessibility one, of here's a barrier preventing people from joining us, and something that we take really seriously about breaking any kind of barrier and trying to help you. It's not helping you experience our stuff and giving us money. It's to help you serve your people better, your customers. your colleagues, your team. We want people to join your organization, see people like you when they are spending their hard-earned money, um, because that makes a difference. That said, I don't only want to talk about our clients, I also want to talk about the community. Because over the last 2 years and counting, we've built a growing orbit of people around this work through webinars, speaking conversations, and events. In our first webinar in January, we had 78 registrations. January 2025, this is, and we had 48 attendees. As far as the first session goes, that's very exciting for us, and it included some of our existing clients like Virgin Money and British Airways, but also names we'd love to work with, such as HSBC Global and the BBC. And that tells me something important. The appetite is there. The appetite for accessibility exists, and people are interested in learning more. We've also seen strong webinar performance on some topics, especially neurodiversity and our panel discussions. That also matters because it shows the conversations is not narrowing, it's widening. The people aren't only asking about the technical accessibility, they're asking about culture, they're asking about communication, neuro inclusion, of which I happen to be a specialist, and how all this plays out in real workplaces. So then, when I look back on kind of client community success, I'm not just defining this only by revenue, I'm defining this by trust, by repeat conversations. Those of you working with us who frequently come back. Those of you who join multiple webinars or open most of our newsletters that we send out. I judge it by referrals because it's one thing saying, "Hey, we're good." It's another thing saying you should speak to Accessible Me. They really know their stuff. So by people telling us they now understand accessibility differently, and by organisations beginning to move from kind of good intentions to practical action, that's really what it's all about. Moving into the next section of the webinar or this video, what has changed in accessibility or digital accessibility since 2024? This is an important part of the story because it shapes where we were, where we're going. So because the accessibility conversation is in 26 isn't the same as it was in 2024, a few big things have changed. First, urgency has increased. So in multiple places across our materials, the transcripts of our meetings, our webinars, even the kind of prospect meeting, there's a growing emphasis on legal standards, risk and readiness. The European Accessibility Act came into effect in June last year, June 2025. And in one conversation, I explained that if you kind of sell or promote through your website, accessibility is no longer something only public bodies need to think about. It's becoming a much broader expectation. At the same time, WCAG 2.2, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, has become a more visible reference point in our work and offers. It's not something only to kind of frighten people with, that's not our intention, but as part of a clearer structure of what good looks like. And there are other guidelines which we adhere to too, such as COGA, the Cognitive Accessibility Guidelines. Secondly, I'd say accessibility is becoming more operational. In 2024, many organizations still treat accessibility as a side conversation, something maybe nice to have, a specialist concern that only serves a few little people, and actually in some of our cases, we were pitched, like, why should we spend on accessibility to cater for this potential audience when we could spend more on our marketing effort, and attract people that way? It kind of signals to me that many people were still seeing, especially back in 2024, were seeing accessibility as a box to tick later. Now, the pressure is a little bit different, whether that's the European Accessibility Act, whether that's ADA, the Americans with Disability Act Title II. Now, teams are asking practical questions around their websites, booking journeys, forms, learning platforms, audits, procurement, content processes, and internal confidence. So I've even said, that 2020 preparing for 2026 isn't about fear, it's about maturity, and I still think that's true. Third, the market is getting noisier. Our strategy says that accessibility consultancies, are multiplying, and the AI tools are entering the space. That means more conversation, which is good, yes, but it also means more confusion, more shortcuts, more organizations being tempted by quick fixes that don't actually create real inclusion. That the toolbar you see on many websites is a prime example. And fourth, the conversations become broader and more human. So we're not just talking about websites in isolation anymore. We're not talking just about physical spaces. We're talking about learning development more broadly. We're talking about HR or human resources. It involves, more increasingly so, neuroinclusion, supporting people like myself with Tourette's, ADHD, autism, maybe the other conditions such as uh, dyslexia, dyspraxia, or dyscalculia. All of these things people are becoming more aware, and in increasing that awareness, which is something we strive to do, we want to move past that awareness and take organizations into action. Ultimately, it comes down to workplace culture. It's about how people experience systems. So not just whether a page technically passes a check and you get that little check on your audit strategy. Our strategy is very clear that the niche accessible me occupies is accessibility plus N&D plus neuro inclusion plus workplace culture. And that's exactly where I think our market is moving. Continuing on this thread, fifth, I'd say expectations have changed. The leaders don't just want awareness sessions anymore. We're companies are getting sued, whether that's through the European Accessibility Act or ADA Title II. So they don't just need kind of awareness, our team knowing we should do something, but not actually doing it. They want action. They want to see change. And those of you who've seen our pitch deck says it plainly. Compliance deadlines are here, yes, and internal confidence is often low. Training's fragmented or reactive, and leaders want action, not awareness only. And that feels like a very accurate summary of where the market now is. So to bring that back to the original question, what has changed since 2024? I'd say accessibility has moved from being a specialist topic on the edge of the conversation to a much more visible business, learning, and culture issue. That does not mean, let me be very clear, that does not mean that everyone has caught up. In fact, I'd say far from it. What it does mean is that organizations are starting now to not are starting now and not just kind of in some kind of early abstract sense. They're being more sensible, they're being more proactive, they're recognizing where the world is heading. We live in a world with influencers, people big on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and they're aware that if they have a bad experience using your product, using your services, or accessing your venue, that they will speak to their audience. So these individuals have power. Where we're headed then is products, partnerships, and purpose. So, and with that, this is now us looking forward. So, yes, we've looked at where we've been. Let's now look at kind of where we want to go next. And with that, I'd say, I think the next chapter for Accessible Me is about three things. First thing is clarity. Clarity is something we all want. Second would be scale. I think we've proven our proof of concept now. We're just ready to take it better. And I've got some exciting partnerships on the horizon, which I can't wait to tell you about. And third is staying human. If those of you who follow my personal newsletter on LinkedIn, you'll see it's aptly named Designing for Real People. And in that, I use people first language. So you have the medical model, you might have the social model of a disability. We use the people first model because we are designing for people with different conditions, people who are deaf, people who are blind, people who have autism, or people who have ADHD. We are designing for people, and we want to keep that human lens. So, on the clarity, the first of those, we know that people need a safer starting point. And that's one reason our model has become simpler. So the journey we now talk about is very clear. You can start small with us and then build momentum over time, and we'll help you sustain that progress. In practical terms, that might mean a simple first step, then a deeper onboarding. Then, if you need it, ongoing support is there to help you sustain this. And that pathway is now central to the business model, to our business model, and how we want buyers to experience us at Accessible Me. Our products we're continuing to build around those areas are already proving meaningful. That includes allyship, our escape room, both the online version and the in-person one. It includes our audits, and I'm very excited to be announcing a partnership soon to make that far more accessible, far more exciting. It also includes our webinars and training, and it includes strategy support, so helping your leaders know how to do this and in what order. Our strategy also identifies easy read documents and training programs as flagship products with strong potential. So they're not necessarily core to what we do just yet. There has been a growing demand in easy read, and we absolutely have the partners to help you if that's something you do indeed need. There's also a wider structured journey that we've been developing around scans, onboarding, and ongoing support, which is what we call the Accessible Approved badge. The language in our materials is that we should be simple, structured, and sustainable. And I think that gives us a good clue about where we are heading or where we're going. Fewer random offers that you might have seen previously, and more joined up journeys. On the partnership front, that matters more than ever. And if you're interested in partnering with us at Accessible Me, please do get in touch. Our strategy explicitly says that partnerships with content providers, learning management system vendors, and L&D consultancies could open doors to us and reduce reliance on solo outreach. And I agree with that. Some of our best future growth for Accessible Me will come not just from doing all the work ourselves, but if there's an area that we don't do or feel that somebody could be strong on, being the company who can go, no, we can't help you, unfortunately, but I can pretty confidently say, we can point you in the direction of somebody who can help. So this isn't all about doing things ourselves, but from enabling better work through the right partners. On purpose, then, this is potentially the part I'd say I care about most. Growth matters, yes, of course it does, and cash matters as well. We are into charity, and the difference between our success for us as a company is the difference between kind of keeping a roof over the heads for my children and keeping food on our table. So repeat customers matter. If you looked previously or when we started, you might have seen dots on a calendar, little scattered dots of revenue. You want to see lines of revenue. We want to keep you coming back, and that means delivering quality services, quality products, quality learning, and we're starting to see a lot more repeat customers, which is fantastic. And all of that is real, but the purpose underneath it has to stay intact. Accessible Me is at its best when we help organizations move from anxiety, from fear of I don't know what we do, are we falling behind, from anxiety to action. It comes from helping individuals from confusion to clarity, knowing what they have to do and in what order they should potentially do things. It comes from compliance only thinking that they might have been to meaningful inclusion. So not just compliance is the floor, and meeting minimum standards, but becoming the culture, the company's DNA, the ethos, and from designing from the average person to designing for real human beings. That's what I want our next phase at Accessible Me to deepen. So not just more work, but better work. Better work is one of those things that's going to keep us motivated, keep us moving, and keep us innovating. So not just more awareness, but better decisions. Not just more conversations with prospects, but more barriers removed. If you're having success from the easy read documents and people have fed back to you, that they love having things in a different way, let us know that. We would love to hear it. Moving towards the end now, if we look at kind of Q&A and reflections, Before I close, I would love to open it up, and we're not going to record this little bit. So if you are watching on catch up, please do pop your questions in the chat, in the comments, sorry, or get in touch. So you might have a question, you might have a reflection from working with us over the last few years, or you might want to share what's changed in your organization since you first come across us. You might want to simply say, where accessibility feels difficult to you. And if it still feels difficult, that's fine. I'm not here to make you feel bad. So ultimately, if you feel comfortable in doing so, drop something in the comments, or get in touch if you want to keep that private. A couple of things to help you think about though. What's one thing in your organization that has changed how you think about accessibility in the last 2 years? What's one barrier that still shows up in your team or organization, whether that's the onboarding, getting people through the door, or the way you conduct sessions, especially if you're working in a dispersed team, in a hybrid setting? And what is one practical step that feels achievable for you this year? Hopefully that's given you some food for thought. Maybe if that's getting you thinking, maybe share this with your manager, or share your thoughts with your manager. And as we wrap up, I want to kind of finish right back to where I started, and that's with gratitude. Accessible Me is 2 years old today. I understand that's still young, so I understand we're kind of a baby compared to some of our um, more established, bigger organizations, but we are still learning. I'm learning every single day, and we're adding to our offering things like trauma-informed design. We're still innovating with gamification. We're still refining. So I will make mistakes. My daughter asked me recently, whether people who are fully blind could also have dyslexia? Fantastic question, and something that I wouldn't have given thought about. So I do what I do. I go away and I do a little bit of research that refines my thinking, and it goes back into the building. So we are still very much building, and I'm proud of what these last 2 years represent. To what we've been able to build is a real business built around a real mission. We're doing work that is grounded in lived experience, my experience with threats, autism, ADHD, depression, and anxiety, but also practical expertise, leveraging that kind of L&D experience I built up over the last 14 years. Our conversations that are turning into action, and a community of people who want to build a more inclusive world. So if that's one of you, I just want to say once more, thank you for being part of this with us. And whether you've worked with us directly, you haven't yet and are thinking about it, you've attended a session, shared an idea, introduced us to someone, or simply believe in what we are trying to build, thank you. And if today, whether joining us live or kind of watching this on repeat, has sparked something for you, the next step doesn't need to be huge. It might just be a conversation. It might be a small audit. Can you test our PowerPoint template? Could you test our website templates? Because most of our website pages come off of 5 key templates. A blog, contact us. It might be an allyship session, and it might not be the full-fledged simulating every condition. You might be a charity supporting people who are blind and want to focus on the sight aspect, or focus on the deaf aspect. We can absolutely tailor it to what you and your organization need. It might simply be taking one part of your current process and making it more accessible than it was before. The reason for that is because that's how progress happens. It is small, iterative things, making it more inclusive than it was yesterday. So it's not trying to do everything all at once and say, hey, we are AAA, by next week. That's unrealistic, but take one step. If you are halfway up the ladder or you're yet to take your first step, take one step, because that's how you begin. So with that, I just want to say thank you again, and it sounds a bit cheesy, but a happy second birthday to Accessible Me. Thank you so much for joining, everyone, and yeah, watch this space. We will absolutely love to stay in touch. Thank you, and take care. Bye bye.